Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to League Analysis. I'm Handygamer, and in this video, which is the fifth of my series about the draft between SKT and RNG throughout the World Semifinals, I'll be taking a look into the fourth game of the series. In case you didn't check out my previous videos, I highly recommend you go back to at least watching the first part, where I will be discussing the jungle trifecta that I see currently in this World's meta. But also check out the beginning of the second one, because there I will be discussing the draft priorities, which I have brought up for you right now, just so you can have a brief glance at them. I won't be discussing them in detail here, just reminder, RNG want to close out in the mid game. They want to play around Uzi and enable him to carry. They have a variety of champions prepared for the mid lane to counteract the Galio. On the opposite side, SKT go for picking the Galio all the time. It's a high priority pick for them. Faker was very open about how strong he considers the pick to be. And at least SKT have adapted in terms of their bans. They have now started banning away the Janna and the Shen. And on the opposite side, RNG have been sticking to their Jace, Gragas, and Xayah Rakan kind of bans, or at least takeaways. So that's that. SKT in the first two games played around the bot side, trying to stop Uzi with aggressive supports. In the third game, they kind of defaulted back to the Lulu, and as we will see now, they will stick with the Lulu and play around enabling Bang more than they will play around stopping Uzi. Now, if we take a look at the actual draft, we can see both teams have remained with their priorities in terms of pick ban. However, we see that SKT with their first ban have started to adapt again. They ban away the Sejuani, they ban away the Janna and the Tristana. The Tristana, again, one of their high priority picks coming into this draft. They ban it away on blue side. They pick it quite commonly on red side. Obviously, Tristana is a very strong champ on that patch. I discussed it in more detail in the previous videos. I don't want to go over it again. SKT first pick the Galio, again sticking to that pattern. On the opposite side now, RNG are picking their jungle. They decide to go for the Jarvan here, and if you've been listening in on my jungle trifecta video, you will probably already know what my opinion is in terms of which one of the two champions you should pick if Gragas and Jarvan are left open. Obviously, you have to consider Peanut has just been subbed in, so RNG are a bit in the dark as to what his actual champion pool might be. He's known as a very aggressive player. If they sub him in now, just as the analyst desk was pointing out, or the cast was also pointing out during the broadcast, everybody was expecting Peanut to play an aggressive champion. He is the aggressive player between him and Blank. Blank more reactive player, more team focused player. So I think going for the Jarvan per se is fine, but I think there's also a strong case that can be made that you should at least ban away the Gragas in the second part of the ban rotation. But before we get to that, we see SKT again switching it up. They stick to the Lulu, and they now pick up the Kog'Maw for Bang. This is pretty crucial to me because it shows, from my point of view, a change in game plan for them. They have previously been playing to shut down Uzi. Now they are, if you also kind of discount the third game where Uzi was not really playing his standard Twitch that he will fall back upon in this game, but was playing the Vayne. Now SKT are actually playing around Bang. They pick him, the hyper carry, and as the game kind of shows, his mentality is back at it again. He is one of the most clutch players that will perform under the highest pressure, even though his performance prior to that were rather shaky. Just, I think for me the big come out play where Bang kind of showed his carry potential, whereas previously he was only seen as like a utility follow-up kind of AD carry. Was his performance in the series against CJ Entis 2 years back, when they were facing elimination. They were again 2-1 down in a best of 3, best of 5. And it was a Kog'Maw hyper carry meta. It was the Rocks Tigers era where they would run the Juggernaut and he would perform on the same level of play, but not with a hyper carry, such as the Kog'Maw, but instead with Illusion. I will link the highlight video, or a highlight video, to that match down below, because I think this video, or this highlight clip, shows why you always have to respect the potential of SKT playing around Bang, because that's, I think, their playstyle that they will fall back to if everything else fails. That is their true best playstyle, because Faker obviously can outperform each and every player in this tournament in his role, but he truly shines when he is enabling his team, and that's, for example, why he was playing Lulu and Orianna as his most played champions over the course of his career. Obviously, they were also always fitting the meta when he was playing them, but nonetheless, Faker isn't all about all the shiny plays, but he's the one playing for his team to win, and that includes playing Galio 5 times in a row. Now, again, Kog'Maw for Bang, Twitch for Uzi. I think that's somewhat of an even bot lane. Ryze is more than able to deal with Galio, also pretty fine. Now, with this first part of the draft behind us, let's take a look into the second ban phase. Again, we see the Shen and the Cho'Gath banned away by SKT. Pretty obvious bans there. Discussed them in the previous video. Don't want to go over them again, but we see on RNG's side of the draft something that we already saw in the first game. They have no clue as to what SKT are actually playing in the jungle. Or might consider playing in the jungle, because now they ban away Ezreal and Nidalee, again targeted at Peanut's aggressive playstyle, and thinking they can simply shut him down by taking away his most aggressive picks and picking an aggressive jungler, or at least strong early game jungler themselves. However, they leave open the Gragas. Again, personally, I'm convinced that Gragas is simply countering everything that Jarvan will be trying to do throughout the entire game. So, to me, there's no point in picking the Jarvan if you leave open the Gragas. And even though SKT has already locked in their support, they won't be running Janna. Janna isn't the hard counter to Jarvan in the way that Gragas is, because Jarvan can jump the AD carry when Janna isn't nearby, then her Monsoon is kind of useless, and Gragas doesn't have that problem. He can also interrupt Jarvan much more easily during his flag and drag, so yeah, just a bit much better counter, and I think the statistics will back me up on that part. I kind of checked in. Janna is like roughly 8-5 or something against Jarvan, so she's doing well, but she's not crushing him. However, Gragas is, and if you look at it, some of the games where Janna was playing against Jarvan, where she managed to pull ahead, were with Gragas, so it's kind of hard to distinguish in those cases which one of the two was actually the harder counter. Well, any case, RNG now pick up the Soraka. The cast already pointed it out. The silence field is actually pretty nice to lock down enemies caught or trapped inside a Cataclysm. If you manage to get a good Cataclysm out, which is where the Gragas again will come in. And obviously she's a nice heal bot that can kind of make up for the lack of frontline that RNG have drafted so far. Obviously, they still have their top lane pick open at the point where they pick the Soraka, and usually Let Me would end up playing a tank on the top side, so That would be pretty nice. The team composition, have the Jarvan dive in, have the Soraka follow up potentially, but then you're kind of left with the Twitch not having too much protection except for the Soraka heal, but that might be fine if Uzi is finding a decent angle to fire the shots. And obviously Xiaohu with the Rise is also a pretty important damage threat. So I think up until this point the draft coming out from RNG looks pretty decent. SKT, however, do what RNG tried doing to them in the second game. They pick the Gnar blind for the top side, saying, well, you know that RNG is only playing tanks on the top side. We play something that counters each and every tank, and we are pretty confident in the fact that Let Me won't be pulling out the Camille that actually Huni ran into the Gnar in the second game. So we kind of guarantee ourselves a winning top lane matchup, and we lock in the Gragas for Peanut. And thus we both have strong engage with Flash Body Slam and the Gnar, both to set up the fights. Then you have the Galli ult both as a potential follow-up and as a protection tool for the Kog'Maw with the damage reduction it offers. You also have the Lulu for the Kog'Maw, but you can also use the Wild Growth as a chain CC tool if, say, the Gnar is going in for the Mega Gnar into the wall, then you have the knock up, and in the meantime, Kog'Maw is taking free hits at everybody inside that CC chain. So, pretty decent draft for SKT. I think strong synergies all around, winning top side, even bot side, if not even slight advantages for them there, because Kog'Maw can outrange the Twitch, and Lulu, I think, is more of an aggressive support than the Soraka, but I don't know. Soraka has a lot of sustain, so I think bot lane should be somewhat even. Mid lane, obviously, slight early advantages for the Rise, simply because of his spell rotations that he can consistently throw at Faker, but as soon as Faker manages to pick up some magic resist items, he would simply just clear the wave and then go roam, something that he's been doing throughout the entire series, so pardon, you're also doing pretty fine there. Now, obviously, we haven't talked about the Rumble lock-in yet, and I actually chose this exact time for the screenshot to show that RNG were not really sure what to pick up until the very last second. They lock in the Rumble more or less at the very last second because they don't know what to do. They know that they have to hold or have someone on the top side that's able to deal with Huni sitting there and applying pressure all the time. And I think the main reason why they ended up picking Rumble is because Let Me, if he feels too pressured, can simply use his equalizer to deny a wave and then reset the map, so to speak. However, that's obviously not the best use case of an equalizer, and as we will see in the game, Let Me's performance in Rumble isn't too great. So let's discuss what other options RNG could have had. Obviously, there's still the Maokai available to them that they played in the previous game, but no matter if you run the Maokai or say, I don't know, maybe a Trundle or whatever in the top side, you'll always be staring down the melee versus ranged matchup, and Nara will simply outtrade you, and especially in the later stages of the game, simply permanently shove in your minion wave. Let Me isn't exactly the kind of Ken or other aggressive top lane player, so I think RNG kind of end up in a position where they have to pick a losing top lane matchup, and at this point it doesn't really matter what they end up locking in because the outcome in terms of map pressure will always be the same. So going for the Rumble with the potential of a wombo combo with the Cataclysm into Equalizer, the hot pot, as I think Quickshot was calling it. I don't remember who was actually casting it, but I remember it being called the hot pot. That's actually a pretty nice combo. However, choosing the Rumble here kind of gives up on your team identity, which revolves around a top laner that is tanky, being able to set up fights with a teleport flank or follow up for the aggressive jungler, in this case Jarvan, coming out of MLXG. So I think even though the team composition that RNG drafted is pretty okay in terms of its win conditions, it does have a strong win condition. It has the wombo combo. It has a lot of team fight damage. It has the sustain of the Soraka if she doesn't get focused early on in the fight. And you have Uzi on his character Twitch. And I think overall it looks good on paper. However, it doesn't really fit the playstyle of Let Me. You have Jarvan versus Gragas as a jungle matchup, which is, from my point of view, a huge disadvantage because you're basically lacking half of a champion's kit in terms of what you actually can do. Even though you still have the abilities, there's always the potential of the perfect counterplay. And you're also playing Twitch into Gragas, which again I consider a pretty nice matchup for the Gragas because he can, in team fights, always decide the tempo of the team fight. He can always decide whether he wants to keep the Twitch in or push him out if he has his explosive cask available. So I think a lot of the team fights will actually come down to what Peanut is able to do and if there actually will be a team fight because of the usage of the explosive cask. On the opposite side, SKT, as I mentioned, they played around, they pick around their team identity, they pick around what they actually wanted to play. They have the Galio for the mid lane that can apply pressure on both top and bot, pardon. And you have Huni on a champion that he can just sit on the top lane for like ever. And Peanut actually on a jungler that can do stuff in the early game but is still relevant in later stages of the game. You have a triple frontline combination, so you can always alternate the aggro of the enemy team. RNG don't have that option. They only have a single frontline out of MLXG's Jarvan, who isn't that tanky at all. So in case you're falling behind, you're stuck in a situation where it's actually really hard for you to initiate fights because if things go wrong, your frontline's dead and you have to concede like the next 2 to 3 objectives simply because you don't have anyone to stand in front and take the damage. So overall, I think SKT have a team composition that fits their playstyle more. They have strong synergy picks as well. RNG also have that. They have the strong synergies, but it doesn't fit their playstyle. So overall, I think SKT will have an easier time executing their team composition than RNG will have. That's it for my 5th video of this series. Thanks for watching and make sure to check out the very last one. I hope I'll get around to making a video series about the other semifinal before the Worlds final actually hits. So might also want to check out if I get around to do that as well. Bye.